The thing AI surfaced for me that I had not heard of anywhere else, that the doctors never talked to us about, that I think we absolutely do want to do, is a thing called ctDNA. This is called Circulating Tumor DNA. And basically what happens is, because we have a tissue sample, we request that the tissue sample be sent to the lab. Basically, you send the cancer tissue to a lab, they do a genetic fingerprint on it, and then later you can do blood tests, and they're very sensitive. I believe the number is 5 cells in a million it should be able to detect. So if this cancer is coming back in a meaningful way at all, it starts to show up on the ctDNA before it would show up with diagnostics, and then you can get a jump on doing some treatment. Our oncologist was aware of that, but said it's not really standard. A friend of mine who's also an oncologist said, yeah, I don't really recommend that for my patients. It's not really proven. If it does come back positive, then what are you going to do? Would you treat based on that? If you can't even, but she happens to work in a more solid tumor realm, whereas these lymphomas, because they grow so fast, and the model I believe to be Gemini 3, we're both on the same page that for this particular situation, literature shows that what they recommend is basically inadequate. What they recommend is monthly appointments with blood draws. But again, the blood draw is just going to show the LDH, which is, at that point, you're probably starting to get sick. And then quarterly scans, which, you don't want to have too much radiation from the scans, but, by the time they can see it on a scan, it's starting to be kind of large. Again, I think that varies a little bit depending on if it's a solid tumor cancer versus I think they can spot small things there. But for the lymphoma, and again, it's growing so fast. Anyway, the bottom line is the monitoring regime that they recommend doesn't seem to work that well. Most people who do have a relapse come back because they're sick. They don't start treatment because a diagnostic identified the issue before they were sick. They come back because they're sick, which makes sense because, again, if it has a 24-hour doubling time, you're going to be sick pretty quick. So one thing we are probably going to do that we wouldn't have done otherwise, I didn't even know about otherwise, is this ctDNA, where you send in the tissue now, they do the fingerprint, and then later on you do the blood tests. You can do them, kind of periodically. You can do them kind of however often you want to. And if you get a positive, especially after a bunch of negatives, you should also be able to use this throughout the treatment process to confirm with even more confidence than the usual scans that, and maybe we could even, I haven't thought about this until right now, but maybe we could even save our kids some radiation exposure from the scans if the ctDNA tests are coming back negative, because that should be the most sensitive test that there is for, is this cancer cell present in the body or not? If it's not at that level, you're probably not going to see anything on the scan either. In fact, they say that sometimes, again, I'm just learning all of this from AI. I'm not Googling at all. Often with a mass like my son has in his abdomen, you can be cancer free, but there's some scar tissue that's still left there. And so it will kind of show up on the scan as ooh, there might still be something there. It's kind of hard to say. We don't know. And then I guess a lot of times they have to do an extra biopsy to get that tissue, and then they come back and say, oh, no, it was just scar tissue, you're okay. Or maybe it was cancer, but the point is they don't know. ctDNA should be trustworthy enough that you could see this scar tissue on the scan, but if the ctDNA shows no cancer in the blood, then you should be good to go. You should be confident enough that you don't need another biopsy, or you don't need maybe you could even avoid the scan.